which is reshaping food access and employment. So those stories and more coming up on Rise and Shine in this first hour. Let's get our news first with Nolutando Butelezi. Following her will be sports headlines by Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Cameroon's presidential candidate, who's been banned from running for the October elections, Maurice Kamto, is set to appeal his exclusion. The Electoral Commission rejected Kamto's candidacy, the main rival for President Paul Biya. In the upcoming presidential election, Kamto came in second place with 14% of the vote in the last election held in 2018, which 92-year-old Biya won by a landslide. The United Nations Department of Safety and Security warns that the decision to exclude candidates could lead to widespread public protests. Our correspondent in Cameroon, Moki Kenzeka.
And he said the Kane, who is the president of the Manidem party that nominated Maurice Kamto, he is saying that they are going to appeal in the highest court in the land, that is the Constitutional Council. They have up to midnight today, Monday, to appeal. They are appealing and seeking the face of the Constitutional Council to allow Kamto to give authorization to Kamto to compete in the elections, because they think his rejection, the rejection of his candidacy papers, was simply manipulated by the government of the Republic of Cameroon.
Ghana has deployed more soldiers to a northeastern region where long-running conflict over chieftaincy has led to recent violence. This includes attacks on schools. The Bwamku chieftaincy conflict, rooted in a dispute between the Mamprusi and the Kusasi ethnic groups, has been one of Ghana's most protracted ethnic flashpoints. Mediation efforts by Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, Ghana's revered traditional ruler, had almost brought finality to the conflict, but recent killings have required drastic actions to control it. A curfew will be in place until further notice to help restore order and facilitate the evacuation of students. The chairperson for the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into explosive allegations of corruption and collusion in South Africa's justice system is set to kick off. President Cyril Ramaphosa established the commission following Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi allegations against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu and senior police officers with criminal syndicates. The commission's chairperson, Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga, told the media that the consultations with General Mkhwanazi were imminent. The commission will also investigate claims that criminal networks have infiltrated law enforcement, intelligence agencies.
Yeah, I'll close it just now.
The justice system. Other areas of focus include the facilitation of organized crime, manipulation of investigations, and targeting of whistleblowers and officials. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to host the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo in Rwanda, Felix Tshisekedi and Paul Kagame, in the coming weeks to seal a peace agreement that he has hailed as a glorious triumph. Trump hopes to back up the peace agreement with deals that will boost U.S. investment in the region. The Trump administration is spearheading an ambitious but controversial peace initiative aimed at ending the long-running conflict in eastern DRC that has also drawn in neighboring Rwanda. Its mediation efforts come as no surprise, as the DRC, a nation in the heart of Africa, is endowed with the mineral wealth that the U.S. requires to power the IT and now AI revolutions, much of which is currently going to China. The UN's Human Rights Office has urged Iran to abolish the death penalty after more than 600 reported executions so far this year. The UN said that there has been a worrying surge with many of them put to death, charged with drug offenses or with what it called broad and vague crimes such as enmity against God used to silence dissent. It said that minority groups were disproportionately targeted. In response, Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismaili Bagheri defended Iran's use of execution.
قوانین داخلی ایران برای
The death penalty is recognized under Iran's domestic laws for a range of the most serious crimes. It is also accepted in many other countries. That said, our judiciary is striving to limit the use of this punishment to only the most severe crimes.
We still can't hear it at all. My headphones, I don't think
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando.
it's fine. We'll come.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
On the Green Rover there on the top corner of the left. Top corner there on top there's a Green Rover there. It will when you click on it, there will be a drop down and then it says refresh.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, so every day after the 6 o'clock news, we get into what we call the Africa Roundup here on Channel Africa. And this is where we give you a wrap-up, I guess, of stories that have made headlines from the previous day. And that's where our team of reporters and researchers compile for you what you need to be in the know about, also throwing forward into what to expect in news developing stories in this new day. So today we start with the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who have condemned an attack on a church in the northeast of the country that left 43 people dead and several others injured. Authorities say the rebel Allied Democratic Forces group carried out the attack in the mineral-rich province of Ituri over the weekend. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Most of the victims were reportedly killed with machetes. 9 of them were children. The armed men looted shops and set houses on fire before they fled. The DRC army has blamed the attack on militiamen from the Allied Democratic Forces. The group is reported to have links with the so-called Islamic State. Its top leadership is composed of Islamists originally from Uganda. The UN peacekeeping mission has expressed its outrage at the acts of violence which constitute violations of international humanitarian law. The mission's acting head, Vivian van der Per, has called on all foreign armed groups to lay down their arms and return to their countries of origin. She also urged Congolese authorities to investigate the killings and bring the perpetrators to justice.
As Ethiopia hosts the UN Food Systems Summit Stocktake in Addis Ababa, a youth-driven poultry initiative is reshaping food access and employment. Young farmers in Shega City are offering affordable chicken and eggs while tackling unemployment and inflation. Alice Rizzo reports.
This initiative is part of a broader government effort to boost domestic food production. Launched in June 2024, it now includes more than 20 youth associations in the Fiore locality alone. Sanbato Lumi, a local job creation officer, explains that the initiative addresses both food affordability and youth unemployment.
We've been able to produce chicken and eggs in mass by organising our unemployed youths. There are about 20 youth associations in this locality alone. These associations supply the society eggs and chicken at a very low price, especially for the residents of this area, and at exhibitions and bazaars during festive season.
Norway views Zambia as a key partner for investment and development amid global trade tensions and weakening multilateralism. Norwegian Minister Ashmud Agrust stressed the need for dependable allies like Zambia and Norway's intent to deepen cooperation. President Hakainde Hichilema said Zambia aims to adopt Norway's transparency and environmental standards, particularly in mining.
This country admires a lot of things that Norway has done post the Second World War. Your management of the resource envelope that you have, oil, gas, forests, very admirable. That's why, really it's important that Norway was able to invest the children's development skills for the economy. So we truly admire the
Dennis is on in I'll take on hybrid.
So, and we would like through that to strengthen our bilateral partnership. I think there's a lot we bring to the table, both of us, on your side.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame officially launched the 2025 Giants of Africa Festival in Kigali, a lively week-long celebration of youth, sport, culture, and community running through August 2nd. The event gathered 320 young men and women from 20 African countries, united by basketball and a shared vision for a brighter African future.
I'm very pleased that we could host this festival for the second time in Kigali. We feel proud, together with you, that we can pull off this that brings out a lot about our continent. Giants of Africa have been a trailblazer in sports, in infrastructure, in identifying and developing the talent that is in Africa's youth.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll do that again tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. But coming up on Rise and Shine, we delve deeper into the stories making news headlines in and around our continent. And the area of focus today is East Africa with a resident analyst. So stay tuned.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Stella Longwe. Pamalonje.
Palitusokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda.
Okay, I've logged him there. I'm coming, Asanda.
Apa ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusani kuti kodi moyo wanu oyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Please close and open it again, Asanda.
Ayi azonga iyo sichikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa akuti kumenya yonse azioneka zoti azikutheka ditu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Parlez-vous couramment le français?
Are you sorted?
La radio. Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, at 19 minutes past 6, let's check in with what's happening in the East African region of our continent. And we speak to journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru, to highlight some issues. Dennis, how are you on this Tuesday? Thanks for making time.
Thank you so much, Asanda. I'm doing well. How are you in South Africa?
We're doing okay in South Africa. It's good to be back after taking some leave yesterday. But let's get straight into it. And today we look at, yes, Somalia first. The fragmented governance in that country is seen as a breeding ground for Al Shabaab. What can you tell us in terms of how the anti terrorism strategy for Somalia is now being negatively impacted by issues in governance?
Thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, the unity that we've been seeing in the Somalia's government, and we've seen some of the political commentators saying that this is the greatest weapon for the Al-Shabaab. And I remember we've been witnessing a cyclical rivalry between the federal government, state, and the political opposition, which we see that undermines the counterterrorism strategy that we early see succeed. And of course, despite having a robust and multifaceted counterterrorism strategy, Somalia's gain against the Al-Shabaab terror group are now losing the momentum due to what we see as political instability. And this comes when elections approaches, and their attention is diverted from urban terrorism to power struggle. And we have seen this as after part of the Somalia's being liberated from Al-Shabaab in 2022, which made a significant stride in against the group. And remember, we've been having this offensive which have slowed since 2024, and this year alone, the year where we are having the power struggles. We have seen Al-Shabaab retook key areas in the central Somalia, and to a point they even tried to assassinate President Asanda Sheikh Mohamud, and is also threatening the capital, that is Mogadishu. So the country's counterterrorism strategy, which now involves security forces operation prevention, do the social and economic development, the institutions that we see, that is the Somalia National Army and the police. And that as leaders try to involve themselves in the power struggle, Al-Shabaab, on their hand, are trying to regroup, and they are now taking some of the key areas in Somalia.
So let's talk then in terms of the terrorism efforts and strategy in Somalia and the turn they should now be taking. This has been an issue that they've been dealing with for years and years. And it seems that when there's elections, there seems to be a focus away from anti-terrorism strategies, and it's almost like a forgetfulness in terms of how far the country has come. Is there a deviation in terms of that strategy? What should happen now?
Yes, of course. When Somalia is approaching elections now, the deviation, the focus now focuses on election, and of course how people should be elected, how a political party should have their people, and then they forget that they are dealing with the elephant in the room. That is now the Al-Shabaab, who now take the advantage of the vacuum, the security related issues, and they start clashing with security forces. And it is evident, leading to the 2022 elections, the president, the prime minister, and the members of the state and the president disagreed over the electoral process. This posting a 12-month election delay, and tension culminated the fighting between the loyal troops, the then President Mahmoud Abdullahi Mohammed, and the opposition. And we have seen in 2022 the clashes, Al-Shabaab clashed with security forces, which has now increased from 19% compared to 21 in 2021, while the attacks on civilians rose by 41%. And we have seen the strategies that Al-Shabaab is now using. They're now minimizing the harm on the civilians, but they increase the attacks on government forces and authorities, which is a strategy that for them is really working perfectly because the leaders, the we of tension, people do not want to have a sit down, have a conversation on how to solve political related processes.
Let's move to Kenya now, or Tanzania. Now we've heard that there's another Kenyan that's been abducted in the country of Tanzania. What is the backstory here, first of all?
Thank you so much, Asanda. And barely a few months where we saw a top Kenyan activist, Boniface Mwangi, and the counterpart from Uganda, Agatha Atore, forcefully abducted and later on released after severe torture. We have seen another Kenyan activist, he called Mabili Mwagodi, who had been working in Tanzania's industry for a while now. And it is said that Mwagodi was a critic to the Tanzanian government and the Kenyan government. And was confirming the news that is through human rights defenders and Vocal African CEO Hussein Khalid confirmed that Mwagodi was abducted and was tortured for 4 days in Tanzania, and later on he was dropped in a bush that is in Kinondo, Kwale County. This is the border between Kenya and Tanzania in the wee hours of Sunday. And reportedly, after he was being dropped in Kwale, he contacted his family and took himself to a police station in Diani, where they also tried to detain him. However, through the intervention of Vocal Africa, this led to his release. And currently, this activist, Mabili Mwagodi, is being treated in Mombasa after severe torture, and he is yet to speak to the media to tell the world what really transpired. But as per the family members and people close to Mwambili, say that everyone was surprised to see police detaining him despite being dropped by the Tanzanian authorities at the border to a point he was even beaten. So this is another case of police abduction and brutality that we see being melted on the Kenyan activists. Anyone who is seen as a critic of the Kenyan government and the Tanzanian government.
Human rights groups have spoken out against these kinds of abductions and even attacks in between the countries of Kenya and Tanzania. What are they now saying? And is this some kind of way of exhausting these human rights activists and shutting them down?
You see, Asanda, Kenya and Tanzania is a very critical moment with the Gen Z protests and the pressure piling on the president to make sure that some of the people in government are sacked or fired. Same time in Tanzania, of course, the Tanzanians will be going into elections in less than 2 months. And people see it as a collaboration between the two governments because we've not seen or heard any statement from the Tanzanian authority or Kenyan authority in regards to the abduction. Remember the abduction that happened, we've never seen government officials, both from the two countries, come out boldly and address the whole issue of abductions.
I think this will be our final story because we are running out of time and we need to take headlines. But let's talk about Tanzania and Rwanda deepening their ties with a new transport and trade commitments. What will this tackle exactly? And is the infrastructure already there, or are they still looking for funding at this stage?
Thank you. Of course, Tanzania, they have formalized the bilateral agreements to enhance the cooperation both in air connectivity, rail development, and also in the promotion of the Swahili. And we've also seen the agreements on infrastructure projects, including the standard gauge railway linking the two nations and their feasibility studies. Of course, the agreements were signed by Rwanda's Foreign Affairs Minister Olivia and Hongihire and Tanzanian counterpart Mohamed Dhabi Kombo during the 16th Joint Permanent Commission in Kigali. Of course, this comes after the two nations realized that they can leverage on each other's efforts. And I remember the Tanzanian standard gauge railway has already seen the connectivity, and beyond the aviation, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Combo said that both governments are committed to implementing more ambitious infrastructure projects. One of the key projects under the consideration was the standard gauge rail, which is expected to link Tanzania and Rwanda. Of course, Tanzania, 2 years ago, I think, they launched and became one of the East African countries with electric rail. That is the standard gauge. And Rwanda will want to leverage on that and borrow the idea. Of course, the issue of resources is at the center stage, because Tanzania's railway was financed by loans. So probably the two nations will have to have a sit down and see whether how to implement these mega projects in East Africa.
All right. Well, we welcome trade, especially when it's intra-Africa trade in any moment. But we'll leave it there for today. Dennis, thank you again for your insights. It's always great having these great catching up sessions with you. Have a great day further.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you. Dennis Pero is journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, as he gives us stories making headlines in the East African region of our continent. It's 6:31 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Noluthando Buthelezi. She's got our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Presidential candidate who's been banned from running for the October elections, Maurice Kamti, is set to appeal his expulsion. The chairperson of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the explosive allegation of corruption and collusion in South Africa's justice system is set to kick off. And U.S. President Donald Trump says that he's been in talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to look at various plans to free hostages still held in Gaza. I'll have the details top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura with our news bulletin sports-wise.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports. Yes. Let's start with cricket news. So overnight, Australia completed a 5-0 sweep of the West Indies in their T20 International Series, with Ben Durhouse's bowling paving the way for a 3-wicket victory in St Kitts on Monday. So Mitchell Owen then top scored for Australia with 37 off 17 balls, with a Cameron Green on 32, Tim David on 13, as well as Aaron Hardy, 28 not out, all making valuable contributions. This as the visitors reached their target of 171 with about 18 balls to spare. So the win sealed the first T20 series sweep by an Australian men's team in the West Indies. Australia now will return home for a limited overs series against South Africa, while the West Indies will play Pakistan in 3 T20 as well as 3 one-day internationals in the next coming weeks. On to football news now. World Football Governing Body FIFA has inaugurated a new regional office in Rabat to support the development of football in Africa. So the new branch, located just next to the Mohammed V football complex in the city of Saleh, will coordinate FIFA's activities in North as well as West Africa. FIFA President Gianni Infantino, the CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe, as well as the head of the Moroccan Football Federation, Fawez Lejake, attended the opening ceremony. Lejake also described the project as part of a long-term strategy launched by King Mohammed V more than 20 years ago. The launch also follows an agreement signed in December of 2024 between FIFA as well as the Moroccan government, the Moroccan Football Federation, to establish a regional office as part of a wider strategy to build infrastructure as well as provide technical and educational support to African nations. Now, FIFA President Gianni Infantino also announced that Morocco will host the inaugural edition of the FIFA Under-17 Women's Club World Cup in 2025. Uganda's men's head coach Morale Beyawakoso was full of praise for his team's fighting spirit following a 2-1 win over Senegal in a pre-CHAN tournament over the weekend in the city of Arusha. Now, the Sekafa 3-nation tournament featuring Uganda, Tanzania, as well as Senegal as part of the final preparations for the African Nations Championship CHAN tournament that is set to begin on the 2nd of August and run through until the 30th of August. The coach says he's happy with what he's seen from the Chargers so far and the build-up to the tournament.
We've had 2 preparation games in Tanzania. We lost the first one against Tanzania, and we've won the last with Senegal. We've learned a lot of things from this tournament. Mainly, we wanted to see how we could play. We wanted to see how our boys would get the mileage of playing the big tournament. We wanted to see how could we possess in terms when we have possession, when we have the ball. We wanted to see how we could defend when we are out of possession. So we've seen
Can you hear me?
things.
Back home now, settling in the new country as well as a new league is not easy and requires a lot of adaptation. But the newly appointed Kaizer Chiefs captain Inacio Miguel says he has one piece of advice for his teammate, a new striker in Flavio Silva. So his advice is to adapt first to his surroundings. Miguel, an Angolan international who is now in his 2nd season in South Africa, this after joining from Petro de Luanda in Angola, says Silva, who hails from Portugal and Guinea-Bissau, must adapt to the club and not the other way around.
So I think that we have to understand that when a foreigner player comes to Kaizer Chiefs, the club doesn't have to adapt to the player has to adapt to the club. So the most important that I told to Flav is don't expect no one to adapt to you. You have to adapt to the country, you have to adapt to the players, you have to adapt to the fans. It's a huge responsibility, not pressure. I always tell him, don't take it as a pressure because we are privileged. We have a privilege of playing football. Take it as a responsibility. So.
And finally, in tennis news, Japan's Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam singles champion, will work with Polish coach Tomasz Witoworski on a trial basis after splitting from Patrick Mouratoglou after less than a year together. So Osaka announced the parting of the Frenchman, the former coach of Serena Williams, on social media on Monday before defeating Canadian qualifier Arina Arensloot 6-4 and 6-2 in 76 minutes in the first round of the WTA Canadian Open in Montreal. Osaka, ranked 49th in the world, began working with in Canada with the Polish coach who coached Poland's Agnieszka Radwanska from 2011 to 2018, helping her reach the Wimbledon final and also becoming the world number 2 in July of 2012. Now, the Polish coach also coached the likes of Poland's Iga Świątek from late 2021 until last October and had a run where she also won 4 of the 6 Grand Slam singles titles before also adding the most recent one at Wimbledon earlier on this month. Osaka, who improved to 11-1 in matches against players ranked outside of the top 100, will next face 13 seed Ludmila Samsonova in the second round of the Montreal Open. They have split 4 prior meetings, but Osaka won the 2 that they played on the hard courts of the USA as well as Australia. Well, that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Stella Longwe pamalonje.
palitu sokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje ndiyetu apa tili ndi katswiri oyimba ameneyu ndi katswiri wa dziko la malawi amene akukhala mdziko la south africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi big nick malawi yatiuzani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi aziwoneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu johannesburg.
Malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's find out what's happening in the world of economics as we get our business news with Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Diesel prices in South Africa are expected to go up next month, while petrol users can expect a slight reprieve. This is according to the latest unaudited data from Central Energy Fund. The data shows both grades of diesel are expected to increase by between 62 and 63 cents a litre, depending on the grade. Nothando Magudulela reports.
Paraffin is anticipated to tick up by 29 cents a litre. However, retail unleaded 95 and 93 petrol prices may decrease by around 29 cents and 33 cents respectively. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources is expected to release the final fuel price adjustments later this week or early next week. Nothando Makutulela in Johannesburg.
The Soil of Africa civic movement, which led a march in the South African capital Pretoria to demand jobs for South Africans, says the protest was aimed at drawing attention to the country's high unemployment rate. Protesters claim the N4 Gateway Industrial Park prioritizes undocumented foreign nationals over local residents. However, the movement's chairperson, Bongani Ramuja, expresses hope that the march will yield positive results, particularly job opportunities for the youth.
Our interest is to make sure that the youth of Mamelodi is being employed all over Mamelodi. Also the youth of Soshanguve and other respected township. As we speak now, talking to you in Waitlu, last week they took 40 kids. After we launched the Sizosebenza Ngenkani program, they've employed 40. And today already now they're saying that they want to give us 5 already without even moving and departing this place. It shows that there's an impact that all of Africa is doing.
Chinese and one of the world's leading electric car manufacturers.
No, it's only us this site when we do that. But I think we'll use this one. We'll use this one doesn't leak.
Took place last Friday in Johannesburg, South Africa. The partnership comes as demand for new energy vehicles and EVs.
Yeah, there's no package. After life read, we'll just go straight to her.
Adoption of green solutions in the local passenger vehicles market, as well as achieve a shared goal between the two institutions with the establishment of a green vehicle finance ecosystem.
In West Africa, Ghana has cancelled a $1.2 billion bauxite lease with local firm Rockshore International, seeking a partnership instead with a big overseas company to tap one of West Africa's richest deposits. Potential partners include Dubai-based Emirates Global Aluminium or a Chinese firm. Rockshore's lease covered the Niahin Hills in central Ghana, home to about 376 million tons of bauxite and feedstock for aluminium. Farmers say rainfall was well below average last week across most of Côte d'Ivoire's main cocoa growing regions, while a cold spell has raised concerns among farmers about potential crop damage that could reduce expectations for the October to March main crop. The world's top cocoa producer is in its rainy season, which runs officially from April to mid-November, when rains are abundant and often heavy. Several farmers say the main cocoa crop was developing well, with many flowers turning into small pods and young pods gaining weight. Let's now shift our focus to financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 527. In Botswana, 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 38. Zambia, 23 kwacha 27. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 58. Russia, 80 rubles 13. India, 86 rupee 63. China, 7 yuan 18. South Africa, $1 is at 17 rand 83 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,314, platinum at $1,394 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $70.05 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Right, our G20 fact for this Tuesday. South Africa's participation in the G20 is guided by the country's 4 foreign policy pillars. They are the national interests, the African agenda, South-South cooperation, and multilateralism. South Africa officially assumed the presidency of the G20 on 1st December 2024, making it the first country on the African continent to lead the premier forum. And that's our G20 fact for this 29th of July.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, let's talk now this story, talking textiles and fashion and the likes. So the 5th edition of Africa Textile Talks opens later this morning in Cape Town, South Africa. The event is the continent's leading forum for debate and action on fashion, textiles, and sustainability, and hopes to challenge delegates to imagine a future where garments are living expressions of care, repair, and regeneration. The event is co-produced by Twig, a non-profit media platform from South Africa, and Emilio Collective, a social creative enterprise from Mauritius. The theme for the 2025 summit is Thread with Care. So let's speak to Jackie May now, who is director and founder and editor of Twig, who joins us on the line to tell us more about this summit. Jackie, welcome to Rise and Shine. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody.
Let's get background on Twig first of all. You are a non-profit media platform from South Africa focusing on the fashion and textiles industry. What exactly are you about?
So we're a digital magazine, and our purpose really is to offer our readers and our community alternatives to mainstream product and lifestyle choices. So we want to sort of entice people into making choices that are better for the planet and for people. And our role is to make sure that we research and find those brands and find out how they were made and where they were made, and then hopefully entice people to buy those and use those, or not buy them and use them, which is probably preferable.
Yeah. So you've gone into this partnership then with the Emilwa Collective from Mauritius to bring us the fifth edition of the Africa Textile Talks. What are the key themes and topics that are being explored this year?
So what we do, we focus on, so fashion obviously is much more than just clothes. It starts at a farm and a soil level. So we really invite people from across the value chain to talk to us about the responsible ways of making fibers and yarns and ultimately clothes. And this year we're focusing on the concept of care, because the world is in such a mess. And we really want to drive the point that we should be living with more care, we should be producing things with more care, and just a sort of a gentler touch on the world is so important. And also, we are operating in South Africa, and we know that our clothing industry is going through, it's been destroyed by globalization and cheap imports. So we're also very focused on helping create a greener and a bigger local clothing industry.
How is the event addressing the challenges and opportunities of sustainability in the African textile industry? When we're going greener, what exactly are we doing?
So we're very focused on natural fibers. So we're very focused on everything that is not synthetic or plastic, because that's derived from petrochemical industry. So we're looking at the alternatives, and we're looking at cotton, and we're looking at hemp, and we're looking at banana fibers, and then how they're made. Are they made? There's more. The farming is important. And we really driving that point of slower, more sustainable, in the sense, like particularly we're talking about natural fibers. And then obviously natural fibers in the process can become unsustainable depending on the chemicals that are applied to it. So we really want people to think about the process of making textiles all along the value chain. And by doing what we've done, it's a 3-day event. And the first day is focused on circularity, which is making sure that clothes become reused. So we've got the most amazing speakers talking about their recycling operations. And also circularity is not only about waste management, but it's also about design, quality clothing. So that's all happening today. That focuses on today, and I'm very excited about that. We've sold our tickets, so we had to change the venue because it's such a big and popular day. Then tomorrow we're focusing on wool. And as you know, South Africa is one of the biggest wool producers in the world. And wool is the most wonderful and sustainable fabric. And we really part of the day is sponsored by Cape Wools, and they've been doing a lot of work about spreading this idea that wool is a local, sustainable fiber. And then on our third day, which is on Thursday, we have speakers from all over the continent talking about their practices. We've got experts from Uganda. We've got somebody from Ghana coming to talk about their upcycling company that they run in Ghana, and they've just won a huge award from H&M, they're a global change award maker. And then I can't remember who else we've got. We've got so many speakers. Oh, we've got somebody speaking from Zimbabwe about her fabulous fashion brand, House of Stone, that and her title of her talk is Manufacturing Without Factories. So fashion without factories is the title of her talk, because, as you know, in Africa, so much of what we do and how we make things is produced by tiny micro enterprises, solo entrepreneurs. We grow things on smallholder farms instead of big commercial farms. So we really want to talk about the reality of making and growing on Africa.
Let's talk about the role of technology in terms of innovation and sustainability in the industry of fashion. Are we taking that up as Africans at the pace that we should, especially when we speak of alternative fabrics? Is there a willingness for even the fashion designers to do their own work in terms of research and technological advancement and know-how?
It's such a good question because we're focusing quite strongly on innovation this year, both innovation that's happening in the wool space and innovation with an organization in Uganda who are working with banana fibers. So I can't really answer that question as well as I would be able to by the end of the week. But in my experience, because we've also tried to do something with kelp, is that there is very little funding for innovation in the space, and we find that designers, as they do a lot of collaboration, they're doing a lot of their own work. But I would love to see more support. I would love to see more funding from wherever the money may be lying right now, but into innovation. I think it's essential that we do more of that, and we also need to do research on what is appropriate. A lot of what, when we talk about circularity, a lot of the ideas and concepts are being formulated in the global north, and we need to practice and see how do we adapt and what are the local solutions to these problems. So that's also a big focus of ours. What works in South Africa? When we're talking about circularity, should we be bringing in huge chemical recycling solutions, or should we actually be focusing on what recycling can be done in a decentralized micro enterprise model, or do we do both? So I think it's very important that we understand and we do that research and look at what's appropriate for our own contexts. And obviously, Africa is a big continent, multiple countries. So it's not, the solutions that work in South Africa might not be the solutions that work in Kenya, for instance. But I really want us to have dialogue about this and talk about it. And it needs to be unpacked, and we need to do the work.
The impact of globalization and the implications for African textile company owners and designers. Let's talk about that, because not so long ago in the country of South Africa particularly, we had an influx of Chinese imports, which posed major challenges for our own industry, fashion and textiles. So let's talk about those implications of globalization. Are they still as dire or impactful negatively as they were, or are we finding some balance then in terms of recovery and balancing it out in terms of Africa also having a strong imprint on textiles and fashion in the world?
No, we haven't found a balance. I'm just trying to open up the story I wrote recently about that. No, there's okay. If we're focusing specifically on textiles and fashion, we're very much out of kilter. So I think it's a real problem. I mean, I don't want to become, we don't want to be an isolationist, and we don't want to close off trade. But we, as a country, we've got a lot more that we can do in terms of finishing. We produce, in terms of mohair and wool, we are big suppliers to the world, but it goes out as a raw fiber. So as a country, we've got the opportunity to beneficiate and send and get our fibers turn them into beautiful clothes and then export the clothes. So we've got lots of work to do, and it is a big problem because the imports are often so much cheaper, as you know, than locally produced clothes. So that's just a quick to answer your question there. I think everybody knows it's a big problem, and it really is hard on the local industry.
Right. So what else can we expect? What can visitors expect? There'll be leading designers, as you say, who are part of this event.
And we're also hosting this year for the first time. Each year, this is the first time we're doing it over 3 days. Last year, the year before, the first 2 years were on Zoom, but this is the first year we're doing it over 3 days. And I must tell you that last day is, I think, probably fully booked now, but we've been sold out for a while. So it's been incredibly popular. But we are also, we've taken the exhibition. We always have an exhibition of textiles and fibers. We've taken that off-site and we're putting it into a different venue so it can be up for longer. And that is going to be on a church house in Cape Town. That's behind the St. George's Cathedral. And that's a collection of product fibers, fiber art, and I'm very excited about that because we have, yeah, it's the opening. It'll be open from this evening and then until Saturday. So please, if you are in Cape Town, I highly recommend you come and see all this amazing stuff that our curator Tandikile Mkize is installing there. Yeah,
All
so
right.
that's on tomorrow. From today. I'm getting confused.
I'm sure there's a lot happening in your head. You're going to be all over the place, but I'm sure you'll have fun by the time all of it is done. So we'll leave you to that. And thanks again for joining us, Jackie.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day and hope to see you.
Good, awesome. Thank you so much. Jackie May is director, founder, and editor of Twig. They are a South African based non-profit organization looking at the fashion and textiles industry and how that can be made to be more sustainable and targeting, I guess, environmentalists, what they would love in terms of going more green and sustainable when it comes to Africa's textile industry. And that's as we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. We welcome you to the show. If you've just joined us, thank you for doing just that, coming live to you from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. We are on the SABC Plus app on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as live streaming on YouTube at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. My name is Asanda Beda. In this hour, we look at South Africa's criminal justice system, which is once again under intense scrutiny. And we'll get in terms of analysis there from Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director at Accountability Now, to unpack the legal powers and expectations around the Judicial Commission of Inquiry that's been launched into that political interference, allegedly. We go to Ghana also, where the government there has deployed more troops and imposed a curfew in the town of Bauku as violence linked to a decades-old chieftaincy dispute has escalated. All those stories and more coming up. Let's get our news first. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then Musibudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
Respondent in Cameroon, Moki Kenzaka.
And he said the Kane, who is the president of the Manidem party that nominated Maurice Kamto, he is saying that they are going to appeal in the highest court in the land, that is the Constitutional Council. They have up to midnight today, Monday, to appeal. They are appealing and seeking the face of the Constitutional Council to allow Kamto to give authorization to Kamto to compete in the elections, because they think his rejection, the rejection of his candidacy papers, was simply manipulated by the government of the Republic of Cameroon.
Ghana has deployed more soldiers to a northeastern region where long-running conflict over chieftaincy has led to recent violence, including attacks on schools. The Baku chieftaincy conflict, rooted in a dispute between the Mamprusi and the Kusasi ethnic groups, has been one of Ghana's most protracted ethnic flashpoints. Mediation efforts by Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, Ghana's revered traditional ruler, had almost brought finality to the conflict, but recent killings have required drastic actions to control it. A curfew will be in place until further notice to help restore order and facilitate the evacuation of students. The Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution has welcomed a briefing by the acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga yesterday on the timelines of his commission that will investigate allegations of corruption in the police force and judiciary. The allegations by KZN Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi implicated Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who has since been placed on leave of absence. CASEC Executive Director Lawson Naidu says that it seems like work by the Commission has started behind the scenes.
Well, I thought it was a very useful briefing. It gave us a sense of where the Commission is at. They've hit the ground running. Justice Madlanga said that they've already commenced with their work. They're awaiting the promulgation of the regulations that will go together with the terms of reference references that were gazetted last week. And the Commission will also have to establish its own rules for the inquiry itself, which will pertain to how witnesses are approached. But I think we do have a sense that a lot of work has already commenced behind the scenes.
A study has warned that now the number of people with liver cancer will nearly double worldwide by 2050 unless more is done to avoid contributory factors. They include obesity, alcohol consumption, and hepatitis. The study has also found that 3 out of 5 cases of liver cancer can be prevented. The BBC's Bernadette Coy has more details.
The research by an international team of experts, published in the Lancet Medical Journal, predicts new cases of liver cancer will rise to more than 1.5 million a year from the current level of 870,000. The proportion of cases linked to obesity is set to increase from 5 to 11%, and some 21% of liver cancers will be caused by alcohol by mid-century. The researchers are calling on countries to do more to tackle the risk factors, saying there's urgent need for global action.
The former Colombian president Alvaro Uribe has been found guilty of witness tampering. This relates to a case in which he was accused of colluding with right-wing paramilitary groups when he was in power. Uribe, who remains an influential political figure, could face up to 12 years in jail. The BBC's Lone Wells reports.
He has now become the first former president to face a criminal trial, be convicted, and he was formally charged first in May 2024, with the trial beginning in February this year. He's strongly denied all wrongdoing. His sentence will be decided in a future court hearing, but his defence is expected to appeal the conviction. This ruling against him could well have a significant political impact in the upcoming election next year, potentially benefiting the country's right.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news, the Sawa Banyana finally returned home from the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament last night, while England's women's football team also arrived home to a hero's welcome, though, after winning the Euro 2025 over the weekend. Details coming up at 7:30.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's criminal justice system is once again under intense scrutiny. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of political interference and corruption within the South African Police Service is officially underway through public hearings, although public hearings are only expected to begin in August. President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed Acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga to lead the commission following explosive allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So back to that story then. The claims were that senior officials, including the police minister and a top crime detective, were linked to criminal syndicates and interfered with key investigations. But what exactly can this commission do? What powers does it have? And how will it navigate the legal and political complexities ahead? Joining us now is Advocate Paul Hoffman, a constitutional law expert and director at Accountability Now, to unpack this story. Advocate Hoffman, thank you for joining us this Tuesday. How are you? All right, we're going to try and get a hold of Advocate Hoffman again as we get into this chat around what's happening in the country of South Africa's criminal justice system. Advocate, are you there now?
I can hear you very well. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, now we can hear you. We have a few glitches this morning. We broadcasting from our new studios, so thanks for your patience.
Those are not glitches. Those are teething problems.
Right.
You've seen a baby crying because it's teething. Its teeth are coming through its gums. That's what's happening to you.
Okay, thank you so much for making time, Advocate. Let's talk about what exactly this commission is expected to do and how far can its powers actually go in terms of looking at allegations made within the South African criminal justice system.
Yes, I think it's very important to recognize that even though a very senior judge is presiding over the commission, a commission of inquiry is not like a court of law. A commission of inquiry is a tool of the executive branch of government. So the president has said, I need help with an inquiry into what is going on in the criminal justice administration. And it really is that broad. Not happy at all with the situation in as revealed by General Mkhwanazi on the 6th of.
So it has sparked, or it was sparked by some really bold claims from KwaZulu-Natal Police Province Police Commissioner Mkhwanazi. Just how serious are these kinds of allegations in a legal context?
No, look, it's exceedingly serious, and a commission of inquiry is not the the place where the solution is going to take place. It's a question of accepting that the commission of inquiry is simply there to assist the government in finding out exactly what is going on and making recommendations into correcting any irregularities it finds in the criminal justice administration, right across the board, from judiciary to police to NPA to crime intelligence. Even municipal police are identified as being part of the subject matter of this inquiry. But the problem with the Commission of Inquiry is that it doesn't have any powers as such. It can certainly get people to come and talk to it, but it cannot solve the problem that it is given. It is there to assist the president in finding a solution. It can even make recommendations, but the recommendations do not bind anybody. And its findings of fact, which is on a prima facie basis, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what you would need if you were wanting to criminally charge anybody identified during the commission's hearings. All of that leaves one with the impression that this commission of inquiry has been appointed in order to park what is a very serious political hot potato in the commission to allow the allegations of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi to cool off for a period and to be kicked into touch, as is the habit of the executive in South Africa.
So as it is a prima facie, or it's on a prima facie basis, it's going to be giving recommendations. Can the commission actually force high-profile people to appear, like the police minister or other top cops?
Yes, they certainly do in terms of the Commission's Act and in terms of their own terms of reference. They are entitled to subpoena. Remember, President Zuma was subpoenaed by the Zondo Commission. He refused to go. He was then charged with contempt, and he was found guilty of contempt of court for not appearing before the Zondo Commission. Exactly the same rules would apply in relation to this commission. If this commission even starts. You mustn't forget that the MK party is in court tomorrow in relation to whether any legitimate purpose of government is served by having this commission of inquiry. And it is also attacking the manner in which the cabinet has been reconfigured. I don't think reshuffled is even the right word. There's been a reconfiguration of cabinet in a very unusual way. We now have an acting Minister of Police called Gwedi Mantashe. We have an acting Minister of Police in waiting called Firaz Kachalia. And we have a Minister of Police on garden leave, on full pay, called Senzo Mchunu. And all of that is on the table tomorrow in the Constitutional Court. So it's even possible that the Constitutional Court will agree with MK Party and will refuse to allow the commission to go on.
There's been reports also of a setting up of an online portal where civilians or ordinary South Africans are called to become part of giving tip-offs. On a legal standpoint, how can whistleblowers be protected in this process?
Yes, what the commissioner said at his press conference yesterday is that he is concerned to protect whistleblowers. He is aware that the organs of state that usually protect whistleblowers, which is a unit within the National Prosecuting Authority, may be compromised already and not an appropriate venue or appropriate organization to provide whistleblower protection. And his solution to the problem is to deal with those witnesses who may require protection on a case-by-case basis, which I think is probably the most sensible thing that one can do in the circumstances. You'd have to identify what the threat to the whistleblower is and what the most appropriate way of dealing with that threat would be, given the personal circumstances of the whistleblower.
Professor Hoffman, we appreciate your time this Tuesday morning. Thanks again for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Our pleasure. Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director at Accountability Now, helping us unpack the legal powers and expectations around the Judicial Commission of Inquiry that is being suggested into political interference and corruption within the South African Police Service. Of course, that remains to be seen whether it will actually launch and whether it will yield the results that will be satisfactory to South Africans or even the judicial service space within the country.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
At Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That's where you can get in touch with us, and we welcome your views on Rise and Shine. And that's our various social media platforms of X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're literally everywhere. So do get in touch with us with those views. Right now, though, the East African community has taken major steps to ease migration, but not all member states are keeping pace. This is according to a new study authored by Alan Hirsch from the New South Institute, which highlights that while countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda have embraced the Common Market Protocol, others are falling behind. The report, titled Opening Borders for Migration in the East African Community, Progressive Yet Uneven Reform, praises the region's progress since 2010, but warns that enforcement challenges and uneven commitment could slow full integration. Alan Hirsch joins us now to further unpack this report. Alan, thanks for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm fine, thank you, Asanda. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, we appreciate you making the time. So, this paper highlights that the EAC has made more progress on freer movement than other regions. What has driven this success?
Well, there are a few things. I think the key thing is that there's been leadership from some of the leading countries in the region. So, Kenya, which is the largest economy in the region, has been more open than some of the other big economies in Africa, like Nigeria and South Africa, who are a little bit more hesitant, although Nigeria has moved forward. Rwanda and Uganda are also well known for being quite proactive on migration. Uganda's probably got the most progressive policies on inclusion of refugees. And as I'm sure your listeners know, East Africa has a lot of refugees, especially from the Horn of Africa countries, which have been unstable. Uganda has been very open and has found ways to include people. And Rwanda actually has led the way on opening its borders to visa-free travel from for all Africans. So they've moved ahead. The East African community was first established in the 1960s by the then newly independent African countries. That fell apart because of instability in the region. But when it was reconstituted about 25 years ago, it was much stronger. And, the level of commitment in their regional community is something that I think most Africans can aspire to, even though it has been an uneven process.
So, you mentioned then what these countries have done differently, those who have stood out, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda, in terms of leading in regional migration reform. But how have one stop border posts contributed to easing cross border movement? And are they working as they are intended across all member states?
Well, that was one of the big questions I was interested in because, as you know, South Africa is establishing one-stop border posts under the new border management system. And it turns out that, according to the experts, they're doing really, really well. So there are people who cross the border every day, people with family on the other side or people with jobs on the other side of the border. There are goods that cross the border all the time. And the one-stop border posts have developed systems for allowing that to happen much quicker than many of the border posts in Africa. They have very heavy traffic, which they manage very well. And the reason is that the border authorities on both sides of the border are working together. One stop sometimes means just one stop and one stamp, or no stamp at all, because in some cases people don't need passports even. Or it means stopping in two places quickly, but using a common system, so it's very rapid. Yeah, it has. I think it's been a very important part of the progress that East Africa's made.
Another point that you make in the paper is on the East African Court of Justice and how you point to that being limited in enforcing treaty rights. What reforms or changes would help to strengthen its role?
Well, it's a great system. It's stronger than I think the courts of rights in most of the rest of the African regional communities. But there are two constraints. The one is that if a private citizen wants to approach the court on a human rights issue, like for example, the most common case actually in East Africa is when lawyers from one country cross the border to represent people who are being tried for terrorism in another country. And that's happened, with various Al-Shabaab and other terrorist movements in the region, that those lawyers have been expelled. And they've gone to the court. What happened was that the court instituted a ruling that the court had to be approached within 2 months of the event taking place with all the full documentation. And it's very difficult for even a human rights lawyer to get that kind of documentation together within 2 months and be ready for a court case over that period of time. So that's one limitation. Another limitation is that the leaders in East Africa took a little bit more power in the appointment of judges. So judges feel that they're subject to political pressure to a certain extent. It doesn't affect most of the cases, but in these cases, it does seem to have an effect. So even when there is a good case, they sometimes are thrown out on technicalities.
So those challenges then faced by the newer EAC members in terms of aligning with the Common Market Protocol on freedom of movement, what will it take to tackle those challenges?
Well, the most important thing...
Tato, testing 1 2 1 2.
That's South Sudan, Somalia, and the DRC. I mean, as again, listeners will know, those are some of the more unstable countries in Africa. And they haven't got, to the same extent, the systems of registration of births and civil registration and passport issuing systems that have the same degree of reliability as they do in the leading countries in that region, which are very sophisticated and very reliable. So there needs to be support to those countries in developing systems that will be recognized by other countries. The other thing is that there are a lot of refugees from those areas, so there is there are concerns about when there's instability in the region, there are too many people across the border. So there are some concerns about opening borders completely to people from those three countries.
Right. We're going to leave it there for today. Alan, again, appreciating your time.
Thank you, Asanda. Pleasure to be there.
Thanks. Alan Hirsch is from the New South Institute, unpacking a paper that looks at different countries within the East African community and how they've taken steps to ease migration within the region. But however, not all member states are up to par. Stay with us as we continue with our coverage on Africa Rise and Shine on stories making news in and around our continent.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
A strong call has been made to advance trade justice and improve global market access for African agricultural products. Speaking during a preparatory meeting of the 11th P20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit at the Pan-African Parliament in Johannesburg, South Africa, Bhekizizwe Radebe, the chairperson of International Relations of the National Council of Provinces in the Parliament of South Africa, said despite vast cultural resources, or natural resources rather, Africa remains a net importer of food. He says this paradox reflects structural limitations rather than potential. He spoke to Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu.
The sector is so important because, first of all, it provides for food security. There's no self-respecting nation which cannot afford to feed its own people. So the starting point is the agricultural sector. If you are religious, you know very well the first profession in the world was agriculture. God gave Adam a chance to be a farmer. Go and farm there in the land. So that's the first. So there's no nation which can survive without a prospering agricultural sector.
And what are some of the challenges that are plaguing the sector?
A lot. One of the challenges which are plaguing the sector is, in particular in the African continent, is the lack of research and development. Because what happens when you don't come up with cutting-edge research, it means that you are not able to adapt and you're not able to increase your output. So one is one of the things. The second one is the issue of finance, agricultural finance issue, in particular for the small-scale farmers. They need the support, because without the support, they cannot be able to survive. What support do they need? As we said there inside the issue of infrastructure. If they are going to produce and they don't have the warehouses where they are going to keep their produce, is difficult. And then as we spoke about the infrastructure, the other thing which is affecting us negatively is the issue of the intra-Africa trade. Actually, Africa is one of the continents which trade less with itself. When you go to all the other continents, the largest trade partners are within which are next to each other. But as I said inside the house there, that the colonial masters ensured that our rail infrastructure, our roads, were going straight to the ports so that we don't interact between each other. So one of the important things we have to do is to create an road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, even the biological infrastructure like the laboratories, so that we have a common framework in dealing with these things. So if we don't deal with that, as the African continent, the intra-trade is going to remain at the point it is, at 21%. It's actually very wrong. It's very wrong. That's why we've got the largest tracts of arable land, but we don't help each other. That's why I made an example that if a country which is producing cocoa does not have enough capacity to convert that cocoa into chocolate, what must happen in the process is that the neighboring country must come in, so that instead of taking it to Europe, they take it to the next country which is next door, so that we have a regional value chain, so that by the time it goes out of Africa, it must be a beneficiated product. I also made an example of timber. When you go to Cameroon, the biggest trees we ever found, I went there in Cameroon. I've never seen trees like that. A trunk which might be
Hi, can you hear me?
in diameter, so huge. But when we left the forest, because we were going to watch the gorillas there, you find a lot of trucks shipping out.
No, we're testing if we're leaking.
That timber is going to come back as finisher from Italy, from France, at a very high price. So it means that basically we have exported.
That was Peggy Zizwe Khatebe, the chairperson of International Relations of the National Council of Provinces in the Parliament of South Africa. He was speaking to Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu at a preparatory meeting of the 11th P20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. That's at the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand in South Africa. 7:31 Central African Time. Let's say good morning to Noluthando Buthelezi. She's got our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines.
The African Perspective.
There's been protests over cuts to food aid at a large refugee camp in Kenya. Demonstrators have reportedly clashed with police and set fire to United Nations building. Cameroon's president candidate, who's been banned from running for the October elections, Maurice Kamto, is set to appeal his expulsion. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has acknowledged that there is real starvation.
As for 18, we're going to do, there was a summit, Liberation Movement Summit.
At the top of the hour.
Okay.
SABC News. Headlines.
The African Perspective.
Let's say good morning now to Musibudi Makura. She's got our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the Sports Day. So South Africa's national women's football team arrived home on Monday night from the just concluded Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament out in Morocco. So Banyana having failed to defend their title, finishing in 4th place at the Continental Showpiece. In addressing the media last night, Dr. Desiree Ellis, the head coach of Banyana, spoke about just how much there's been an improvement from the teams on the continent.
A lot of teams came there. Teams that we played last year were obviously better. A lot of teams are not, like I said in the past, you can't underestimate anyone anymore, which we did not. As the defending champions, we knew that every game we were going to play was going to be a cup final, and it was that. And I think, we gave as best as we could. And sometimes when a team just does something better than you have to acknowledge that as well.
Further afield now, the England women's national football team were greeted by cheering crowds as they returned home on Monday. This after the Euro 2025 victory over Spain over the weekend. So hundreds of fans holding flags and dressed in England kits waited just outside the Southend airport to catch a glimpse of the triumphant squad. The Lionesses then travelled by a coach to attend a reception at Downing Street, hosted by the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. So the players also presented them with a signed England shirt and also enjoyed drinks at number 10 Garden in the build-up to the tour trophy. An open top bus parade in central London is due to follow later on Tuesday. So the procession along the mall is also planned, and a ceremony at the Queen Victoria Memorial in front of Buckingham Palace is also said to take place later on today. England defended their European title with a 3-1 penalty shootout victory in the Euro 2025 final in Basel in Switzerland on Sunday. Chloe Kelly scored the winning spot kick following 2 saves from goalkeeper Hannah Hampton, helping the squad become the first English team to win a major tournament on foreign soil. In local football news now, settling in a new country as well as a new league is not easy and requires a lot of adaptation. But newly appointed Kaizer Chiefs captain Inacio Miguel says that he has one piece of advice for the team's new striker Flavio Silva. So his advice is to adapt first to his surroundings. Miguel, an Angolan international who is now in his second season in the South African football fraternity after joining from Petro de Luanda in Angola, says Silva, who hails from Portugal and Guinea-Bissau, must adapt to the club and not the other way around.
So I think that we have to understand that when a foreigner player comes to Kaizer Chiefs, the club doesn't have to adapt to the player has to adapt to the club. So the most important that I told to Flav is don't expect no one to adapt to you. You have to adapt to the country, you have to adapt to the players, you have to adapt to the fans. It's a huge responsibility, not pressure. I always tell him, don't take it as a pressure because we are privileged. We have a privilege of playing football. Take it as a responsibility. So.
On to cricket news now. Australia completed a 5-0 sweep of the West Indies in the T20 International Series, with Ben Dorhouse's bowling also paving the way for a 3-wicket victory in St Kitts on Monday. So Mitchell Owen top scored for Australia with 37 off 17 balls, while Cameron Green, Tim David, as well as Aaron Hardy all made valuable contributions as the visitors reached their target of 171 with 18 balls to spare. The win also sealed the first T20 series sweep by an Australian men's team in the West Indies. Australia now will return home for a limited overs series against South Africa, while the West Indies will play Pakistan in 3 T20s as well as 3 one-day internationals. And finally, hometown hero Eugenie Bohart beat Emiliano Arango 6-4, 2-6 and 6-2 in the first round of the Canadian Open in Montreal on Monday to win that delayed the former world number 5's retirement. Now, Bohart announced earlier on this month that she would walk away from the sport after the tournament, but also added a condition to that plan as to in the wake of her thrilling victory in front of a packed crowd. So playing in only her second singles match of the year, Bohart blasted a forehand winner to take the first set, but the Colombian Arango turned the tables in the second set amid a cascade of unfold errors from her opponent. However, the Canadian broke for 3-1 lead in the decider and hammered a swinging volley to extend the advantage to 4-1. The 31-year-old wildcard put her hands on her head and then on her heart after securing the victory to set up a second-round meeting with 17-seeded player Belinda Bencic of Switzerland. Brit Emma Raducanu meanwhile beat her good friend Elena Gabriela Rus of Romania 6-2 and 6-4 and will next face Peyton Stearns, the world number 2 and the American, for place in the third round of the Canadian Open. It's 7:38 a.m. Central African time. That concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's check in now with Chanduko Likeke. He's got our economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Diesel prices in South Africa are expected to go up next month, while petrol users can expect a slight reprieve. This is according to the latest unaudited data from Central Energy Fund. The data shows both grades of diesel are expected to increase by between 62 and 63 cents a litre, depending on the grade. Nothando Magudulela reports.
The retail price for eliminating paraffin is anticipated to tick up by 29 cents a litre. However, retail unleaded 95 and 93 petrol prices may decrease by around 29 cents and 33 cents respectively. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources is expected to release the final fuel price adjustments later this week or early next week. Nothando Makutulela in Johannesburg.
The Soil of Africa civic movement, which led a march in the South African capital Pretoria to demand jobs for South Africans, says the protest was aimed at drawing attention to the country's high unemployment rate. Protesters claim the N4 Gateway Industrial Park prioritizes undocumented foreign nationals over local residents. However, the movement's chairperson Bongani Ramuja expresses hope that the march will yield positive results, particularly job opportunities for the youth.
Our interest is to make sure that the youth of Mamelodi is being employed all over Mamelodi. Also the youth of Soshanguve and other respected townships. As we speak now, talking to you in Waitlu, last week they took 40 kids. After we launched the Sizosebenza Ngenkani program, they've employed 40. And today already now they're saying that they want to give us 5 already without even moving and departing this place. It shows that there's an impact that Soil of Africa is doing.
Also in the news, Ghana has cancelled a $1.2 billion bauxite lease with local firm Rockshore International, seeking a partnership instead with a big overseas company to tap one of West Africa's richest deposits. Potential partners include Dubai-based Emirates Global Aluminium or a Chinese firm. Rockshore's lease covered the Niahin Hills in central Ghana, home to about 376 million tons of bauxite, the feedstock for aluminium. Farmers say rainfall was well below average last week across most of Côte d'Ivoire's main cocoa-growing regions, while a cold spell has raised concerns among farmers about potential crop damage that could reduce expectations for the October to March main crop. The world's top cocoa producer is in its rainy season, which runs officially from April to mid-November, when rains are abundant and often heavy. Several farmers say the main cocoa crop was developing well, with many flowers turning into small pods and young pods gaining weight. Chinese and one of the world's leading electric car manufacturer BYD and South Africa's commercial bank Absa officially entered into a partnership to drive sustainable vehicle finance solutions at a signing ceremony that took place last Friday in Johannesburg, South Africa. The partnership comes as demand for new energy vehicles and EVs surge in the country. Tutongobeni reports.
The partnership now paves the way for wider adoption of green solutions in the local passenger vehicles market, as well as achieve a shared goal between the two institutions with the establishment of a green vehicle finance ecosystem.
Let's now shift our focus to financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 527, Botswana 13 Pula 28, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 38, Zambia 23 Kwacha 27. BRICS countries $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 58, Russia 80 rubles 13, India 86 rupee 63, China 70 yuan 18, South Africa 17 rand 83 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,312, platinum at $1,401 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $69.96 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligegi.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South African Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Kokda Velenkosini Hlabisa, has urged young people to prioritize education, warning that future generations will demand leaders who are well-informed and academically equipped. Delivering closing remarks at the National Women and Youth Dialogue in Johannesburg on Monday, Hlabisa said the platform was not for debate, but for listening to the voices of historically marginalized groups as part of national efforts to reform and modernize local government. He acknowledged public frustration with government and admitted there are not enough opportunities for meaningful engagement. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
The dialogue, themed Every Municipality Must Work, a call to collective action, is part of a broader policy process led in collaboration with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities and the National Youth Development Agency. This nationwide engagement seeks to elevate the role of historically marginalized constituencies in building a developmental, responsive and people-centered local government. In addition, the dialogue seeks to contribute to a deeper understanding of how municipal governance must evolve to meet the needs of all citizens, especially those whose voices are often underrepresented. In his closing remarks, Kokta Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa said the platform was a forum for listening and not for debating, while by his own admission openly acknowledged that government has not provided sufficient opportunities for meaningful engagement with the public.
It was not the platform for a debate, but it was a platform to listen to your contribution, because we are in a journey that will culminate in March into a document that must shape our local government sphere for the next 30 years. Now, we have listened attentively to your views. We tape recorded every expression you made. We realize, though, that as government, we do not create enough opportunities to engage with our people. Now, when it is a platform for putting your ideas in shaping the local government, people start to express the frustration they have about the government. We take note of that.
Broadly, Hlabisa called on the youth to advance their studies beyond the levels of matric.
But to young people, I want to give you this message. Go to school and learn beyond matric, because 10 years to come, the generation of South Africa will not allow a person who is not well educated to lead them. You can't afford to lead people who are better than you in terms of education.
In an interview with Channel Africa, Deputy Minister in the Presidency responsible for women, youth and persons with disabilities, Steve Mapaseka Litsike. Welcome to the dialogue.
This white paper review on local municipalities is very important because this is 27 years, since the 1998 law that speaks about the vision of local municipality. And after these many years, we're saying we have had so much progress in terms of how we enact local economic development, how we look at women's inclusion, youth inclusion, and persons with disability. But we're at the nux of our world where we're saying to improve what we have done in the last 27 years, including 30 years of democracy, we can do better. We can integrate technology better. We can create safer spaces for women, but we can also open markets for women, youth, and persons with disability owned enterprises. And this is the time to do it, including how we improve service delivery at local level.
Letsike said there are lessons to learn from other jurisdictions in Africa and beyond in setting targets for transformation and inclusiveness.
There's a lot that is happening, not only just here in South Africa, but we've seen in Rwanda, because one was also looking at what are African countries doing that is good that we can learn from. We learn from Rwanda, we learn from Kenya in terms of specific targets that are earmarked for women, youth, and persons with disability. And you monitor it. You're not just rhetoric about women-led and then you don't do it. There's integration in IDPs, but there's also allocation of budgets. But we've also seen outside Africa, countries like Spain, countries like Colombia, that have got apps that assist women in terms of safety nets, in terms of walking the streets. We don't have to have GBV in the highest rate that we have. We don't have to have persons with disability who cannot report water outrage or electricity outrage. That is an inclusive approach that we want to see in our local municipality. And the white paper speaks exactly about that, how we need to improve and how we need to be inclusive.
It is through these dialogues that lived experiences and the voice of all South Africans are included into the revised white paper. Kagiso Khatle, a high school learner from Mpumalanga province, decried of ward councillors who disappear when needed and only resurface during election periods to lobby for votes.
They disappear, you'll only see him or her driving, passing. And I'm certainly sure that this year won't end before that councillor will come to my school and say, let's go vote, let's go vote, let's go vote. We have come into a situation where us as youth have lost confidence towards our local government. How can we retain that? You have to include us to participate towards governing of our local communities. Because we can look at the vote turnout. Youth are not voting. We are not voting because we don't have confidence. We are not heard and we are not given that opportunity. We are not paven a way to participate in terms of governance. So it is crucial for you to go back to schools because that's where youth are.
Traditional royal houses also weighed in on the matter, venting their frustration with government for excluding them. Her Royal Highness Princess Nikiwe Bam is from the Pan-African Young Indigenous Leaders.
My worry is the support and integration for traditional leadership and our municipalities. In rural areas, right now, we have issues of land, plots for just residents, and also the recreation centers for our children. During the term of the late Minister Shikeka, that's when I wrote to him to say we don't have a community hall. But we see that it's in the RDP, it's in the plan, like clinics, roads, and other issues.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
An exact date of the sitting of the Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System in South Africa hasn't been announced yet, nor has the venue been confirmed. The chairperson of the commission, Mbuyiseli Madlanga, revealed this during a media briefing on Monday, saying that they anticipate that the commission will commence sometime in August. However, he assured the public the commission's first consultation is imminent. Sisi Sikhalo has more on the story.
The Judicial Commission of Inquiry that will look into various allegations which were brought to the fore by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa this month. Even though most quarters of society expressed their dissatisfaction regarding the establishment of yet another commission, it is pressing ahead and will soon have its first consultation. Chairperson of the commission is South Africa's acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga.
The fact that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi
made the allegations does not make us ready to start hearing evidence immediately. There must, as I said, first be consultations and assessment of the information we gather, and again, as I said, a follow-up for buttressing the information gathered should that be necessary. This may entail further consultations. We assure South Africans that we are treating the matter with the urgency that it deserves, and that the Commission hearings will commence as soon as the necessary initial steps to bring us to that stage have been finalized.
At this stage, no venue, no exact date of the commencement of the Commission sitting has been finalized. However, Commission hearings will be held in the Gauteng province, laying to rest previous rumors that the Commission was going to sit in the Free State province. Matlanga elaborates.
The procurement process to secure a building in Gauteng is underway. That process is also underway with regard to our other infrastructure requirements. The public will be advised of the premises and online facilities where they can lodge information as soon as this question of procurement has been finalized, which I trust will be soon. What we can say at this stage is that the Commission hearings will be in Gauteng. From the Commission's side, we are doing our utmost best to ensure that the procurement issue is resolved with expedition.
Matlanga could not say how much the Commission will cost the taxpayers and whether the money is already budgeted for. He also could not confirm how many witnesses will be called to the Commission.
It's very difficult to give specifics in this regard because the budget is provided by government, and in law, the government department responsible for running commissions of inquiry is the Department of Justice. So details regarding the budget are best directed to the Department of Justice. And how many witnesses to call? It is early days. We cannot say at this stage. We have not even had the first consultation. It is the first consultation that will give us an idea of the ground that needs to be covered.
Matlanga also used the opportunity to introduce the staff that will be working with him in the Commission and said that they come with a wealth of experience. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time.
On the Move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Right, we enter the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa. A very good morning to you, and thanks for staying with us. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across our various social media platforms. You can find us on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as the SABC Plus app. My name is Asanda Beda, and we'll talk in this hour in terms of liberation movements on the continent, a chat that started yesterday on Rise and Shine. We get a different angle today in terms of what needs to happen in the next phase of emancipation in the region when we look back at liberation movements and then looking forward to the future thereof. That's the story coming up and more. Let's get our news first. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then Musibudi Makura follows with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Protests broke out at one of Kenya's largest refugee camps yesterday, with demonstrators clashing with police and setting fire to United Nations building. The Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya, in the East African nation's second largest, and hosts roughly 300,000 people from South Sudan, Somalia, Uganda, and Burundi. Humanitarian groups have grappled for months with rising tensions as rations have been reduced following massive cuts to aid from the United States and other donors. The protesters are said to be upset over Kenya's plans to turn the camp into a permanent settlement that refugees fear may lead them to losing some of their benefits. Cameroon's president candidate, who has been banned from running for the October elections, Maurice Kamto, is set to appeal his exclusion. The Electoral Commission rejected Kamto's candidacy, the main rival to President Paul Biya in the upcoming presidential election. Kamto came in second place with 14% of the vote in the last election held in 2018, which 92-year-old Biya won by a landslide. The United Nations Department of Safety and Security warns that the decision to exclude candidates could lead to widespread public protests. Our correspondent in Cameroon, Moki Kenzeka.
Anisete Kane, who is the president of the Manidem party that nominated Maurice Kamto, he is saying that they are going to appeal in the highest court in the land, that is the Constitutional Council. They have up to midnight today, Monday, to appeal. They are appealing and seeking the face of the Constitutional Council to allow Kamto to give authorization to Kamto to compete in the elections, because they think the rejection of his candidacy papers was simply manipulated by the government of the Republic of Cameroon.
The Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution has welcomed a briefing by the acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga yesterday on the timelines of his commissions, which will investigate allegations of corruption in the police force and judiciary. The allegations by KZN Provincial Commissioner Ndlandla Mkhwanazi implicated Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who has since been placed on leave of absence. CASAC Executive Director Lawson Naidu says that it seems like work by the Commission has started behind the scenes.
Well, I thought it was a very useful briefing. It gave us a sense of where the Commission is at. They've hit the ground running. Justice Madlanga said that they've already commenced with their work. They're awaiting the promulgation of the regulations that will go together with the terms of reference that were gazetted last week. And the Commission will also have to establish its own rules for the inquiry itself, which will pertain to how witnesses are approached. But I think we do have a sense that a lot of work has already commenced behind the scenes.
A study has warned that the number of people with liver cancer will nearly double worldwide by 2050 unless more is done to avoid contributory factors. They include obesity, alcohol consumption, and hepatitis. The study has also found that 3 out of 5 cases of liver cancer can be prevented. The BBC's Bernadette Kiho had the details.
The research by an international team of experts, published in the Lancet Medical Journal, predicts new cases of liver cancer will rise to more than 1.5 million a year from the current level of 870,000. The proportion of cases linked to obesity is set to increase from 5 to 11%, and some 21% of liver cancers will be caused by alcohol by mid-century. The researchers are calling on countries to do more to tackle the risk factors, saying there's urgent need for global action.
The US President Donald Trump has acknowledged that there's real starvation in Gaza. He has directly contradicted the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Speaking in Scotland, Trump said that the US would support the establishment of new food centres that would be easier to access. He's told reporters that it's up to Israel to ensure that the food gets to where it's needed.
Look, we're giving money and we're giving food, but we're over here and we're over in the United States. He's got to sort of like run it. I want to make sure they get the food, every ounce of food, because that food isn't being delivered.
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, so today officially marks 4 days to the start of the CHAN tournament, co-hosted by Kenya, Uganda as well as Tanzania, while Banyana finally return home from the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament after failing to defend their title. Details of these and other stories coming up at 8:30.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The liberation movements in Southern Africa have recommitted to continue with the next phase of emancipation in the region. The leaders say economic developments should be at the heart of their priorities while safeguarding the gains that they have made over the years. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has been joined by his counterparts from Frelimo in Mozambique, SWAPO from Namibia, ZANU-PF from Zimbabwe, and other countries. These parties also want to reconnect with their people who are running out of patience as they want service delivery and better living conditions. Ditaba Zotezi has more.
There is a renewed offensive against transformation, progressive policies and multilateralism, and a re-weaponization of global institutions, and a deliberate effort to divide and control Africa through transactional diplomacy and economic cohesion. At the heart of this campaign lies a battle for control. To meet present-day challenges, we require urgent, substantial, and sustainable solutions to Africa's challenges.
A moment of rejuvenation as the liberation movements in Southern Africa are tackling challenges they are facing. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says that these political parties have a massive responsibility.
We must recognize that our political independence is incomplete without economic justice. It is incomplete without resolving the question of land. It is incomplete unless we industrialize, we beneficiate the minerals that are extracted from our land, and we create jobs for our youth. As a region, we must replace the colonial extractive model with regional value chains, anchored in our resources, driven by our young people, and fueled by innovation.
His Namibian counterpart and the country's first female president, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, echoes the same sentiments.
The outcomes of most of our recent elections in our respective countries are a clear warning that should not be taken very lightly. We have won our elections, but we have noted how we have won. And that's why a summit like this one is very timely, is very critical, and we need to take it very serious.
Liberation movements say economic development should be given clear focus and improve living standards in their respective countries. ZANU-PF President in Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa.
The mission before us, as stated in our summit theme, is an urgent imperative. Counter-revolutionary forces have doubled up antics to divide and fragment our movements. They are unrelenting in their nefarious quest to obliterate the liberation of movements from the political radar of our region. However, we must remain emboldened by our rich liberation history, which is our greatest teacher.
Meanwhile, these parties have recommitted to tackle corruption and patronage, push for inclusion of women, and safeguard the hard-won freedom in their respective countries. Amdita Basotezi, SABC News.
Right, so let's look at the liberation movements in Africa now and how they've managed the shift from being a liberation party to a governing party, and how liberation movements have transformed as the continent's political landscape reforms. Yesterday, Peter spoke to Mpho Balopi, the new leader of the Botswana Democratic Party. The party gracefully handed over the power after being rejected in the October 30 poll. So today, we continue the discussion and we speak to Dr. Ralph Matekha, who is a political analyst and author, getting other angles to this point. Dr. Matekha, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm good, Asanda, and great talking to you, and morning to your listeners.
Well, thanks for making time, and we appreciate it. If we go back in terms of looking at liberation movements, firstly, what will constitute the next phase of emancipation in the region when we're looking back at these movements and how they've previously been implemented, their targets, their visions, and their goals?
I think that, Asanda, the first phase was to get rid of the institution of oppression, given that most of the liberation movement, they pushed against colonialism and some elements of those oppressive rules that remain within across the nation. So most importantly, it will be to adopt democratic institutions and ensure that people enjoy economic emancipation and they enjoy living in a society where there is inclusivity, where they enjoy citizenship in a way that we have not known before during those time of oppressive regime. So that transformation of society into fully democratic societies where people are enjoying freedoms, that's the most important.
Is it a recommitment that is needed when we look at the liberation movements in Southern Africa, or a complete overhaul of what exists for making way for a new commitment altogether?
I think when you look at it in hindsight, it's clear that pushing against oppressive regimes, apartheid in South Africa, British colonialism in Zimbabwe, and other forms of oppressive regime across the region, it looks as if that was the task that I think was not the most difficult one. And I know some will say that, what are you saying? I mean, pushing against those regimes seems to have been the less difficult part of the whole project. The most difficult project has been to inaugurate democracy, to rethink about shifts from liberation towards building those inclusive societies. That's been the most difficult one because it required transformation of liberation parties to become modern parties that can actually shepherd their nations through this transformation. It has not been an easy task. You look across the region, there are mixed results. In certain areas, you could say some liberation parties have done a greater job in that transformation. And we should mention South Africa, we should mention Botswana. There are some challenges, but all in all, in those countries, there are greater work that has been done, the idea of power sharing. But in certain areas, I mean, we mentioned ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe. You can mention other areas where the opposition actually do not have much say in power sharing, as I've mentioned in relation to South Africa and Botswana. So is it a transformation or an overhaul? Either way, it has to result in a shift in orientation where those parties have to become something different from what they were. They have to now play a role in leading nation through democratization. That requires a reorientation, I think.
Mm. Who should lead efforts for a change in liberation movements? We often talk about the youth being at the forefront of reform in countries. However, is there proper understanding within this group, in your view, of what it means to formulate a liberation movement?
The process of a party transforming from a liberation leader, liberation movement, to a modern democratic party that is more inclusive that process cannot be held by a few. It's a process that on its own should be more inclusive. I mean, we are still talking about some of the liberation parties that retain the character of liberation party, whereas actually the main character they should just retain is the idea of emancipation. But in terms of the way they organize, the organizational culture, the way of recruiting, they should be open to the youth. They should be open to women as well. They should demonstrate that they operate in a world where gender representativity is a value that is enshrined in institution and constitution. So it's about letting go of the idea of liberation and allowing a party to transform into something that will actually enhance those values while becoming something else, while becoming more inclusive to the nation and to the youth as well.
ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has been meeting with his counterparts from Frelimo in Mozambique, SWAPO from Namibia, ZANU-PF from Zimbabwe and other countries in this political party space. How much of an impact will this collaboration between these parties yield? Do their manifestos even align?
I think it's an important summit. I don't want to dismiss it by saying it's a summit about formations that are hanging in the past. I do think that these parties need to share respective experience as to what challenges they have experienced in different jurisdictions, and to share notes as to how do you shepherd that transformation that we're talking about, becoming a modern democratic party that can lead an inclusive society. So that summit, I think, is important to an extent that they can share notes and help each other to navigate what it means to lead a modern democratic nation and how to bring about that. And that on its own, of course, will draw on their history. But I don't think they should focus much on their history. It should be about how ready they are to deal with future challenges. So that summit is quite important. However, it should not just be about reciting the past history, the glorious history that these parties share. It should be about how ready they are to take the nations into the future.
Let's continue this chat. We're going to take a short break. Ralph Mateja joining us, political analyst, talking about liberation movements in Southern Africa. Where do they need to go from here? What stock do they need to take in terms of how far they've come? And we'll continue this chat. Stay with us here on Channel Africa. Our time now being 17 minutes past 8.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
O Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Annika Longi. sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste. Et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, hein, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
We continue our conversation with Ralph Mateka, who's a political analyst, discussing the liberation movements of Southern Africa and which direction they need to go in terms of developments and either overhaul, complete overhaul, or a recommitment to those liberation movements. As we speak about the meeting, Ralph, between Mozambique's Frelimo political party, SWAPO of Namibia, and ZANU-PF of Zimbabwe, spearheaded by the African National Congress of South Africa. Earlier in the year, in June, President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, attended the inauguration of Mozambican President Daniel Chapo. Was that a signal in terms of a starting of collaboration within other political parties? Is that how we should have seen that? And also lending a neutral gesture, I guess, in the politics of Southern Africa from our President Cyril Ramaphosa.
That was quite interesting, the inauguration there in Mozambique. And I think that actually South Africa was called upon as an exemplary of a liberation party that has to a greater extent grown to appreciate democratic principles. South Africa was called upon to speak out on what was happening in Mozambique. We've seen the protest thereof. But South Africa, of course, it is in the sea where, in this region where the region is still largely dominated by these liberation parties. So any conduct by South Africa always brings in this interpretation as to whether we are seeing a collaboration on the basis of Liberation Party or a way forward, taking forward. Mozambique, it presented quite a controversial case thereof. But I do think with the restraint, of course, South Africa it always comes out as a country where we try to say, let's move on. We have this. Liberation is about the basic principle, but we appreciate a shift in power. We appreciate the exchange of power, which is quite a difficult issue within countries that are dominated by liberation parties, where the shift in power, where power moves from some of these liberation parties to different opposition parties, it has brought about real pain to the people where liberation parties do not agree. They've held on to power, sometimes unfairly so. So it is one thing that we have to deal with, that democracy should always be about, and one of the biggest measures of democracy is a peaceful transfer of power from ruling party to opposition party, vice versa over a period of time.
And how do we strike that balance between forming or showing solidarity to regimes that don't necessarily agree with democratic principles, while we also don't look like we've let go of our own democratic principles?
We should reiterate that principle. I mean, there is no other way of measuring democracy. We have known it in the past. The scholarship has also demonstrated that a country can only claim to be democratic if there has been a peaceful transfer of power from one party to another. And we're talking about ZANU-PF, for example, quite controversial there, where there has not been a transfer of power, and you call yourself democratic. That's quite that leaves much to be desired as a democracy. I mean, we need to speak in confidence with each other that we should appreciate certain basic principles of democracy, the transfer of power. And that does not mean that if we appreciate that, we are therefore neglecting what some other people call historical mandate that has characterized these liberation parties, which is about the emancipation of people, uprooting repressive forms of governance among ourselves. So it's not mutually exclusive. We can adhere to the basic principles that we know liberation parties talk about, that emancipation, and at the same time we should appreciate the concept of exchange of power, because that's how democracies are measured.
As we talk of an exchange of power, also on the top of agendas when we talk of liberations are economic developments within the different countries and the realization of the growth of liberations being closely tied to the realization of economic developments. Can we see solidarity on this part of things? Are we looking at the same goals even to be able to align these economic development goals within SADC?
The end goal indeed should be about economic development, should be about collaboration. And that collaboration that we need to build across the region in SADC, it should not be based on some of superficial ideals that we just come from the same place. We should go deep. It should be about what the nations actually want. We should meaningfully build and contribute towards a better economic environment, where the children have got good access to education, build societies that are characterized by gender equity and so forth, human rights, and those things are possible when we strive towards economic emancipation. And the domination of some of the parties on economic landscape, and some have run out of ideas. They are not willing to open to other political parties within their jurisdiction to persuade them as to what are the necessary tools that need to be taken to advance economic development. But that is quite unfortunate. In some areas, you cannot distinguish between a political party and the business, and that should not be the case. I don't want to name and shame countries here, but we should be dealing with that. Build civil society as well, because you cannot have a better economic development without proper civil society. We need accountability. All of these things, they go together. But I think there is commitment to the instrument. Within the SADC region, we are committed to regional integration, cooperation. And as the geopolitics of the world is changing now, we need more of that collaboration on realistic terms, however, not on just shared past history, but on shared goals towards the future.
Things like the national dialogue, which has been called by President Cyril Ramaphosa in South Africa as an example, as well as we just spoke earlier about a commission of inquiry into allegations of fraud within the South African police services. Well, commissions of inquiry being a more reactive approach than a national dialogue, which would be a proactive approach. How do they feed into this topic, and do they, in a way that is meaningful, to address liberation movement growth?
I'm quite wary of once-off interventionist mechanisms such as national dialogue, such as your commissions. You should build society whereby dialogue ought to be part and parcel of policy engagement. You should have an open door policy whereby the persuasion on policy, it's not an exclusive purview of liberation parties or parties that are in government. That's why I'm speaking about civil society. We need civil society. We need to be able to listen to communities through different formations, trade unions as well. They're part of civil society. Business should have platforms through which they can engage with government. We should not wait for national dialogue, because it creates an unfortunate impression that says we just declare crisis, we attend to it once off, and we move on. That is not helpful. Just like commissions, we should build a polity or an engagement environment, a policy dialogue environment that allows engagement throughout, not as a once-off. So that speaks to the quality of democracy. We should talk about how much quality there is in our democracy. We should enhance the quality of our democracy by enhancing participation of civil society. In that way, we can avoid the once-off interventions such as national dialogue. Although I think it can help, given that we are in a crisis, but we should not get used to resorting to those once-off engagements.
Should we push for a stronger stance then on the part of the youth who may not necessarily be as concerned about historical ties or historical alliances or historical solidarity, but would rather look forward to the future?
Our population in the region, in the continent, Africa, is largely youthful. I mean, Africa across the world has got a very, very youthful population. And most of countries across the world are looking into Africa to be saying the future should actually be with the youth. But I also think that the youth should not behave as if it is entitled to a space around the table. The youth should act in a way that they want that space. They should earn that space. The youth should begin to be more serious. I often say to people that being youthful does not necessarily mean being childish. And the youth should actually take up responsibility. And I think it's up to the youth to do that. No one is going to hand it over to the youth on I think that we should make effort indeed to involve the youth, but I think the youth should understand that decisions that have been taken today will have implications for their future. I mean, any decisions that has been taken today in relation to tax, at the end, someone is going to pay for that tax. Someone who is a youth today is going to have to pick that bill years down the road. Therefore, the youth should actually take up their responsibility now through student activism, community participation, leading up within their communities, and also participating in political parties and coming through into parties, be it liberation parties or newer opposition parties. The youth should claim their space, I believe.
Ralph, thank you so much again for your insights. We really appreciate them here on Channel Africa.
Great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Ralph Mateja is a political analyst talking to us on Rise and Shine. 8:30, I think it's 8:31 now. Okay, just almost there. And that means time for news headlines. Here's Noluthando Buthelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
There's been protests over cuts to food aid at a large refugee camp in Kenya. Demonstrators have reportedly clashed with police and set fire to United Nations building. The Council of the Advancement of the South African Constitution has welcomed a briefing by the acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseni Madlanga yesterday on the timelines of his commission that will investigate allegations of corruption in the police force. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has acknowledged that there's real starvation in Gaza, directly contradicted the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'll have more details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Last time for sports on Rise and Shine on this 29th of July. It's Tuesday. Let's say good morning to Musibudi Makura. She's got our details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning once again from the Sports Desk. So two-time champions Morocco have become the first team to arrive for the 2024 Total Energies African Nations Championship Chan tournament, setting the tone of what promises to be an electrifying tournament co-hosted by Kenya, Tanzania as well as Uganda. So the Atlas Lioness landed at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi on Monday morning, receiving a vibrant East African welcome complete with traditional dances as well as music. The North African Giants, aiming to become just the first country to win the Chan title 3 times, are wasting no time in getting acclimatized as they begin their final preparations for the tournament opener. So Morocco's early arrival also signals intent as the two-time winners look to dominate Group A, which includes the host nation Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, as well as Zambia. They'll begin their campaign this coming Sunday against Angola at the Nyayo National Stadium. Back home now, South Africa's women's national football team Banyana Banyana arrived home on Monday night from just the concluded Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco. Banyana Banyana failed to defend their title, finishing in 4th place at the Continental Showpiece. In addressing the media last night, Coach Desiree Ellis spoke about just how the teams have vastly improved on the continent.
A lot of teams came there. Teams that we played last year were obviously better. A lot of teams are not, like I said in the past, you can't underestimate anyone anymore, which we did not. As the defending champions, we knew that every game we were going to play was going to be a cup final, and it was that. And I think, we gave as best as we could. And sometimes when a team just does something better than you have to acknowledge that as well.
Meanwhile, South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, the Deputy Minister, Peace Mabe, says she's disheartened that most football supporters were not present to welcome the women's national team. This after finishing in 4th position at the recently concluded Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament.
Because the girls, they need motivation, they need love, they need support. Whereas that one of their players got injured, and badly injured as well. So if South Africans are not here to cheer them up, it is very sad. It's a very sad day indeed for them and for their families as well, because they have sacrificed to go and carry the South African flag.
Onto this now, hometown hero Eugenie Bohard beat Emiliano Arango 6-4, 2-6 and 6-2 in the first round of the Canadian Open in Montreal on Monday, a win that delayed the former world number 5's retirement. Now, Bohard announced earlier on this month that she would also walk away from the sport after the tournament, but also added a condition to that plan in the wake of a thrilling victory in front of a packed crowd. So playing in her only second singles match of the year, the Canadian blasted a forehand winner to take the first set, but the Colombian Arango turned the tables in the second set amid a cascade of unforced errors from her opponent. However, Bohard then broke for a 3-1 lead in the decider and hampered a swinging volley to extend the advantage to 4-1. The 31-year-old wildcard put her hands on her head, then on her heart after securing the victory to set up a second-round meeting with 17th-seeded player Belinda Bencic of Switzerland. Now, meanwhile, Brit Emma Raducanu beat her good friend Elenia Gabriela Rus of Romania 6-2 and 6-4 and will next face 32nd ranked Peyton Stearns of the USA in the second round of the Montreal Open. Meanwhile, Japan's Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam singles champion, will work with Polish coach Tomasz Witołowski on a trial basis this after splitting with Patrick Motogrulo after less than a year together. Osaka announced the parting with the French coach on Monday, who is the former coach of Serena Williams. Having announced that departure, did Naomi Osaka on social media on Monday before defeating Canadian qualifier Arina Aruslut 6-4 and 6-2 in 76 minutes in the first round of the WTA Canadian Open in Montreal. Osaka, who's currently ranked 49th in the world, began working in Canada with the Polish coach, helping her reach the Wimbledon final and also the world number 2 ranking in July of 2012. Now, Witołowski also coached the likes of Poland's Iga Świątek from late 2021 until October of last year, a run that saw her win 4 of her 6 Grand Slam singles titles before also adding the most recent one at Wimbledon earlier on this month. Osaka will face off with the 13th-seeded Ludmila Samsonova in the second round of the Montreal Open. With that, it's a wrap of your sports news on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, just send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annika Longi. sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheki Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste. Et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheki?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's check in with the world of business. Now here's Chanduko Lekeke with our economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Protests in Angola's capital over a hike in the price of diesel turned violent yesterday, with local media reporting that several people had been killed and many arrested following looting incidents and clashes with the police. The Southern African oil-producing country hiked the diesel price by 1/3 this month as part of a long-running government drive to curb costly subsidies and shore up public finances. Minibus taxi associations have hiked fares by up to 50% and went on a 3-day strike starting yesterday. In October last year, Angola's finance minister announced that fuel subsidies amounted to around 4% of economic output and that the government would continue removing them in phases. The head of the African Union has urged its 55 member states to devote 10% of their gross domestic product to agriculture to promote nutritional resilience. Current projections suggest that some 512 million people will be undernourished by the end of the decade, 60% of them in Africa. The BBC's Camilla Mills has the details.
Speaking at a food summit co-hosted by Italy and Ethiopia, Mohamed Ali Youssef said the urgency of the situation was beyond doubt, with 280 million Africans malnourished. Mr. Youssef said partners need to honour their commitments to finance and support African solutions. The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, said global food insecurity affected around 10% of the world's population. Humanitarian organisations have criticised recent cuts to US and Western aid, which they say will impact the world's most vulnerable people.
In other news, Count Me In movement has called on for an urgent overhaul of spaza shops' regulatory system in South Africa. The movement, which advocates for reforms in spaza shops industry, has launched a vital campaign to reform these regulations, which it believes disadvantages local entrepreneurs. Chairperson of the movement, Sibongile Mbanza, says these regulations are too strict and make it hard for spaza operators to obtain certificates, as they are required to go to more than one department, which delays the progress.
You have to go with a certificate of health, you have to get the certificate of fire, you have to get the certificate of zoning, which makes it very difficult because all those departments, they have also the fees that are charged for you to comply with them, which makes it very difficult for people who are not even making any money on the operations of their spazas. So it makes it very difficult also because you have to move from one area to the next area. It seems like the very laws are still used while the way people live today is different from that time. The purpose of this red tape was to bar black people from entering into the economy or the businesses.
Trade Union Solidarity says it's now looking to fly Safair CEO Elmer Conradi for his intervention in the pilots' strike. Solidarity, which is representing the pilots, reached out to Conradi yesterday to request him to bring parties back to the negotiating table after wage negotiations deadlocked. The strike has entered a second week. The union is demanding a 10.5% salary increase, while the airline is offering 5.7%. The pilots also say their roster is unpredictable. Solidarity Secretary General Gideon du Plessis.
We would have had a settlement, but there are so many egos involved and things, sideshows. that actually makes it difficult. So the sustainability of the company, we obviously take that into consideration. That's why we ask the CEO. We understand he's quite a skillful negotiator, Elmar Conradi, and a more reasonable person to deal with. So we want him to start to get involved. And then we have a settlement, as simple as that.
Australia will expand the volume of solar and wind projects it underwrites in the race to stabilize an aging power grid and hit a target of 82% renewable energy generation by the year 2030. Energy Minister Chris Bowen says the Capacity Investment Scheme, which is the government's flagship program to boost private investment in clean energy projects, will be expanded by 25%. This will help underwrite an additional 8 gigawatts of generation and storage projects, taking the scheme's total coverage to 40 gigawatt. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 527, Botswana 13 pula 28, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 38, Zambia 23 kwacha 27. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 58, Russia 80 rubles 13, India 86 rupee 63, China 71 18, South Africa 17 rand 83 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,312, platinum at $1,401 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $69.96 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Civil society groups in the Democratic Republic of Congo have accused Congolese soldiers and members of militia of raping 13 women in the Eastern Territory of Beni since the beginning of July. Cases of sexual violence have increased significantly in the eastern part of the country after the resurgence of the M23 rebellion in late 2021. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The latest case was reported on 24th July when a 15-year-old girl was raped by a man wearing the uniform of the Congolese army. The use of rape as a weapon of war is widespread in conflict zones in eastern DRC, despite efforts by the Congolese army to stop it. The conflict between government forces and the M23 rebels has seen an alarming increase in cases of sexual violence. Rights groups have accused both sides of carrying out sexual attacks. According to figures from CARE International, there have been 67,000 cases of sexual assaults in the first 4 months of 2025 alone. Many of the victims face stigma and rejection by their family and spouses. Their situation has been made worse because access to treatment has become difficult due to global cuts in humanitarian funding by the US government. Local communities in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo say they are now living in fear following the rise in sexual violence against women and girls. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has told the opening session of a ministerial conference seeking to reinvigorate the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine that they had reached a breaking point. The ministerial conference in New York will take the form of a main plenary and various roundtable discussions and comes just days after French President Emmanuel Macron announced that his country would recognize the state of Palestine, making it the first G7 country to do so. The conference also heard from members of the elders, including former Irish President Mary Robinson, who called for the conference to be a turning point towards a different future. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
A two-state solution conference that comes with a catastrophe in Gaza as an unavoidable backdrop, but a broader conflict that has lasted for generations. And as the UN chief Antonio Guterres articulated here, defying hopes, diplomacy, countless resolutions, and international law.
Precisely because of the grim realities, we must do even more to realize the two-state solution. Today's conference is a rare and indispensable opportunity. We must ensure that it does not become another exercise in well-meaning rhetoric. It can and must serve as a decisive turning point, one that catalyzes irreversible progress towards ending the occupation and realizing our shared aspiration for a viable two-state solution. The two-state solution remains the only framework rooted in international law, endorsed by the Assembly and supported by the international community.
The conference, co-hosted by France and Saudi Arabia, seeks focus on four key thematic areas, including efforts to rally formal recognition of Palestinian statehood, promotion of regional integration with Arab and Islamic normalization of relations with Israel, internal reforms of Palestinian governance, and finally the disarmament and exclusion of Hamas from a future Palestinian state. Listen to French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot.
Your presence in large numbers here today demonstrates the consensus and the mobilization of the international community around the appeal for the end of the war in Gaza. The New York conference, and this will be my second point, must be a turning point and a transformational juncture for the implementation of the two-state solution.
A view echoed by his co-facilitator, Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud.
في هذا المقام على أهمية دعم التحالف العالمي لتنفيذ حل الدولتين.
We confirm the need to support the international alliance for the two-state solution, to follow up on the outcomes of this conference, and to consolidate international efforts to implement clear steps that are chronologically clear to put an end to the occupation and embody the Palestinian state in a manner that would achieve stability and security to all the region and enhance cooperation between the different countries in a manner that would bolster international peace and security.
Member of the Elders, Mary Robinson, warned that the dehumanization of Palestinians by an extremist Israeli government had reached a critical point.
It is my personal view that we are seeing an unfolding genocide in Gaza. It is for international courts to make a final determination. But member states cannot wait for this. You must act now to prevent genocide. In its advisory opinion, the International Court of Justice has found that Israel's policies and actions in the West Bank constitute annexation and breach of its international obligations on racial segregation and apartheid. For those of us who believe in international law and the United Nations Charter, the stark truth is that the government of Israel has not been held accountable for its violations in Gaza and across the occupied Palestinian territory. Its leadership enjoys a high level of impunity, and measures taken to date have not been sufficient to incentivize a change of course.
She recalled an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that last year found Israel's security concerns did not justify its illegal presence in the West Bank and Gaza, or the annexation of territory that continues in violation of international law.
Self-defense cannot be invoked as justification for supplying arms when the use of force is unlawful or there is an overwhelming evidence of atrocity crimes. Ensuring the security of Israelis is central to finding a lasting solution, but this cannot be achieved when arms are used to perpetuate an unlawful occupation and atrocity crimes are fueling grievances on a colossal scale. Of course, there must also be accountability for systematic violations of international law by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups, including the continued holding of Israeli hostages. It is right that member states have strengthened sanctions against Hamas in response to its atrocity crimes against Israeli civilians.
South Africa's delegation to the conference is being led by International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola, who's due to address the main plenary later Monday. The event is being boycotted by both Israel and the United States, with Washington calling the gathering counterproductive to its efforts to end the war in Gaza, which again appear to be faltering. A statement from Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, said the conference did not promote a solution, but rather deepened the illusion, and that instead of demanding the release of the hostages and working to dismantle Hamas's reign of terror, the conference organizers were engaging in discussions and plenaries that were disconnected from reality. I'm Shervin Ricepeas in New York.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
An exact date of the sitting of the Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System of South Africa hasn't been announced yet, nor has the venue been confirmed. The chairperson of the commission, Mbuyiseli Madlanga, revealed this during a media briefing on Monday, saying they anticipate that the commission will commence sometime in August. However, he assured the public the commission's first consultation is imminent. Sisi Sekhalo has more on this story.
The Judicial Commission of Inquiry that will look into various allegations which were brought to the fore by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa this month. Even though most quarters of society expressed their dissatisfaction regarding the establishment of yet another commission, it is pressing ahead and will soon have its first consultation. Chairperson of the commission is South Africa's acting Deputy Chief Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga.
The fact that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi made the allegations does not make us ready to start hearing evidence immediately. There must, as I said, first be consultations and assessment of the information we gather, and again, as I said, a follow-up for buttressing the information gathered should that be necessary. This may entail further consultations. We assure South Africans that we are treating the matter with the urgency that it deserves, and that the Commission hearings will commence as soon as the necessary initial steps to bring us to that stage have been finalized.
At this stage, no venue, no exact date of the commencement of the Commission sitting has been finalized. However, Commission hearings will be held in the Gauteng province, laying to rest previous rumors that the Commission was going to sit in the Free State province. Madlanga elaborates.
The procurement process to secure a building in Gauteng is underway. That process is also underway with regard to our other infrastructure requirements. The public will be advised of the premises and online facilities where they can lodge information as soon as this question of procurement has been finalized, which I trust will be soon. What we can say at this stage is that the Commission hearings will be in Gauteng. From the Commission's side, we are doing our utmost best to ensure that the procurement issue is resolved with expedition.
Madlanga could not say how much the
That report by Sisi Sekhalo on the A commission of inquiry that's been placed forward into criminality, political interference and corruption in the criminal justice system of South Africa, and when that will launch, or even if it will happen. And that's how we end in terms of our coverage of news, making headlines in and around our continent on the Africa Rise and Shine side. But on the side of On the Move, there'll be more coverage there in terms of lifestyle programming and other news. And Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tawo will bring you that one after the news at 9 o'clock. She joins us now, Palesa, to tell us what to expect today. Good morning.
Good morning, Asanda. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Well, this is what you can expect today on the Move. Sometimes a lot of people discover and rediscover themselves a little bit later in life, but unfortunately sometimes you make discoveries about yourself and your sexuality when you're already married. So what happens when one partner who is in a marriage says they're gay, they're lesbian, they're bisexual, or even transgender? Of course, for the person coming out, it's often like a moment of liberation to speak out and finally own their truth, but for the other partner it can be quite jarring and a big change in their lives. So we're going to be exploring what it means and how that truly reshapes the marriage itself, but the individuals within it. We'll be speaking to Rushka Lee, family law mediator and life coach, in the first hour of the show. Moving on in the cubicle, that's our workplace feature. Many times I think the workplace, the HR systems know exactly what to do when an employee has sort of gone off the rails or done something wrong, where they can bring in a disciplinary hearing. But many employees themselves don't actually know how to handle a disciplinary hearings. They don't really know what their rights are, what they can do to defend themselves, and what the processes will be like. So we're going to be unpacking that in the cubicle today, speaking about disciplinary hearings and educating people about the ins and outs of those. We'll be speaking to Sekgofalang Nagafela, who's a human resources consultant, in the second hour. And then we wrap it up with our Money Matters feature, that's personal finance all the way. And we're speaking about what happens if you are a co-parent who's co-parenting with someone who's financially unreliable. What does that main parent do, or that financially reliable parent do with their finances? How do they go through the processes, but also interact with the other parent in that matter? We're chatting to independent financial educator Eunice Sibiya in today's third hour.
Right, On the Move, that's what's coming up. And that's how we say goodbye on Rise and Shine. Join us tomorrow. Peter Ndoro and myself will be back. Asanda Beda. Thank you for sticking to Channel Africa. It's 9 o'clock. As we say goodbye, we say good morning to Noluthando Buthelezi with the news update.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Top stories this hour: protests over cuts to food aid at a large refugee camp in Kenya, and the U.S. acknowledges starvation in Gaza. Protests broke out at one of Kenya's largest refugee camps yesterday, with demonstrators clashing with police and setting fire to United Nations building. The Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya is the East African nation's second largest and hosts roughly 300,000 people from South Sudan, Somalia, Uganda and Burundi. Humanitarian groups have grappled for months with rising tensions as rations have been reduced following massive cuts to aid from the United States and other donors. The protesters are said to be upset over Kenya's plans to turn the camp into permanent settlement that refugees fear may lead to them losing all their benefits. The Council of the Advancement of South African Constitution says that the Commission of Inquiry that President Cyril Ramaphosa recently established appears to have started its work in earnest. The commission is tasked to investigate KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations of corruption among senior police officials. The commission's chairperson, Justice Mbuyiseli Mdlangala, told the media yesterday that they might need more time than their assigned 6 months, with an interim report expected in 3 months. CASEC Executive Director Lawson Naidu.
Well, I thought it was a very useful briefing. It gave us a sense of where the Commission is at. They've hit the ground running. Justice Matlanga said that they've already commenced with their work. They're awaiting the promulgation of the regulations that will go together with the terms of reference that were gazetted last week. And the Commission will also have to establish its own rules for the inquiry itself, which will pertain to how witnesses are approached. But I think we do have a sense that a lot of work has already commenced behind the scenes.
The East African community has taken major steps to ease migration, but not all member states are keeping pace. This is according to a new study authored by Ellen Hish from the New South Institute, which highlights that while countries like Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda have embraced the Common Market Protocol, others are falling behind. The report, titled Opening Borders for Migration in the East African Community, Progressive Yet Uneven Reform, praises the region's progress since 2010, but warns that enforcement challenges are uneven and commitment could slow into full integration. The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa has called on Hamas to give up its weapons to the Palestinian Authority and cede control of the Gaza Strip. He was speaking in New York at a UN conference on a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. Mustafa says that the Palestinian Authority stands ready to invite regional and international forces as part of its stabilization meeting. The U.S. President Donald Trump has acknowledged that there's real starvation in Gaza. He has